everyone. This is Talk Back. It's October. It's a very important month. We're getting ready for very important elections in November. And October is also Domestic Violence Awareness Month. That's why I'm wearing purple, the color of domestic violence. And we have a show that will explore the things that you need to know about how important it is to try to fight against domestic violence in our community. Safe Futures is the organization in Eastern Connecticut that helps to save lives, protects people, secures people's lives, gives them help to fight domestic violence. We work for men, women, children, families. And I want to give a note about the elections. Make sure that when you vote, you know what the candidates think about the laws that have been passed to safeguard people who are victims of domestic violence. Some candidates have much better records in helping to pass legislation that's helpful. So there's always a connection. Let me introduce three very important people from Safe Futures to talk about these issues and the important Safe Futures Walk that is going to happen on Sunday, October 23rd at Waterford High School. So here we have to introduce first Margaret Susloff. Hi, Margaret.
Hello, Sheila. Thank you for having us and letting us talk about Safe Futures.
Great. Margaret is the Chief Operating Officer at Safe Futures. And then we have Christine Foster. Hi, Chris.
Good morning.
Hi, good to see you. Chris is the Director of Counseling and also of the Camp Hope program, which is a wonderful program that's an overnight camping experience for children affected by domestic violence. And then Marie Kenny, someone who's had a long career in police work and enforcement and domestic violence on the state level, in state, out of state, and now is working as the project manager for the new venture, which will be the Center for Safe Futures, which we'll learn about in a little bit. So hi, Marie, it's good to have you here too.
Good morning, Sheila. Thanks for having us.
Okay, great. And you know, we thought that a video that's very expressive and helps you understand what Safe Futures is and what it does would be helpful. So I want Margaret to introduce it. And after Margaret introduces this video with a few words, I want the control room to play the video. Okay, Margaret?
Let's hear it. Thank you. Yes, so we're going to be seeing a video. It's a victim survivor talking about her experience of being someone who suffered and impacted her whole family about domestic violence. The video is called Rachel's Story, and it's about 8 minutes long. So thank you.
Okay, great. Let's play that now.
I was in the DCF office and they had out the wheel and I could identify all the signs of abuse. And they made an appointment with Michelle and I sat there with her. And again, I looked at that wheel and I could identify all of them. The first time I was pushed down and hit my head at a storage locker. That restraining order was denied. I told the judge just exactly what had happened, that I had suffered from financial abuse because of his gambling, but then the abuse got worse. He would unplug the phone. The two older kids were in school, so it was just the baby and the two of us. It's difficult to leave because you're told that you're not going to go and you're not going to get anywhere. Nobody's going to believe you. He's going to take the kids, that he could kill me and hide my body and nobody would find it. And when we did have an apartment, I was stuck in the house for days without a way to even leave. He would fight with me in front of my family, tell me that I was weak, that I was no good, I was a whore, I was a bitch. I was all kinds of nasty things. We were in the hotel and he lifted me up by my neck And because I wasn't giving him what he wanted, he proceeded to take my clothes off. And at the time, I would say that he was taking advantage of me, but now I know that advantage is not the right word. He was raping me. If I hadn't come to Safe Futures, I believe that I definitely would be not here. I definitely believe that I would be gone. When I was at shelter, we had to come up with goals on how we were going to move on. I always stayed on top of my goals. I always looked to stay and look towards the future. The services were always there for me. There's the counseling if you just need to talk, you know. Like, I'm always in contact with Nusa, Marissa, through text, because I always have questions. The advocates at court, that's where I get scared the most, because I get intimidated very easily. So just having her sit there next to me meant the world. I never became aware until I went through this whole process. And I think my time at the Phoenix House was when I really became aware, because it was easier for me to reflect. And then once I started doing that, then I learned really what I had been through. My oldest daughter, Brianna, was very, very troubled. She's now in another counseling group, which she's excelling in. My middle daughter, Nevaeh, she has completed one session of the trauma counseling, and now she's on to the second. On Tuesday nights, they had kids' night down in the conference room in the Phoenix House. They did field trips with them. The trip to the camp itself, they still talk about. They have their drums that I have to say drive mommy crazy. They talk about the food that they had there. I have to say that they were a little leery of going at first. I had to pry Nevaeh off from me to leave the parking lot when I was leaving her at first. But then when I came to pick up, Christine was like, Nevaeh really enjoyed herself. And then I heard about it all the way back home. Luna is the therapeutic dog. Luna not only resided with us at the Genesis house, she followed us to the Phoenix House, where she had a very, very great impact with us. Having Luna definitely made things easier, because when they came home from school, daycare, you could see that all their worries and cares just went away. It meant all the world. It made them more comfortable than Kathy will ever know. High Hopes is one of the greatest highlights of my children's lives. It is incredible. It's a therapeutic horse farm, and Maris, one of the volunteers there, was absolutely wonderful with my children. They learned how to groom the horses, they learned how to ride, they learned all kinds of stuff about horses. They met somebody outside a family that they could really, really grow to love, because when I say that they love her, they really, really love her. They loved going to see her every single week. The future is looking brighter and better. I just landed my first medical assistant, medical administrative job. The girls are really thriving. I have the job, I have the car, I have the house. I'm slowly erasing the memories of him. No longer drive the car that he rode in. I have the education. I live in a totally different new town. I just need to be free. I feel great. I feel great. Thank you, Safe Futures, for everything you do for me. You totally have no idea how grateful I am.
Wow, that was a beautiful video, so impactful on the life of one family and the good that Safe Futures could do. But let's telescope it out. This is a serious problem that affects millions and millions of men, women, and children and families in this country. I mean, all over the world, but certainly in America and certainly in our corner of the world in Eastern Connecticut. So before we get to a slideshow where you can describe more about the features of Safe Future and about the walk we're going to have on Sunday, October 23rd, I want each of you to talk about how the problem impacts so much of our culture and how Safe Futures is a part of doing that. We'll start with you, Margaret, again, as a Chief Operating Officer. What do you see? How do you analyze the huge problem of domestic violence in our culture and in our community?
Well, you're correct, Sheila. It is a large problem. In fact, statistics show that 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men will experience some type of violence in their life. So it is invasive. It is everywhere. For Safe Futures, we're concentrating on southeastern Connecticut, New London County, but we are part of a bigger picture throughout the state with Connecticut Coalition Against Domestic Violence, which is 18 member agencies like ourselves. And also we're connected to national and international agencies who also fight domestic violence. So although on a day-to-day basis, we're working in southeastern Connecticut and being here for people who need us, who have been impacted, anyone who has been impacted by domestic violence, we do work on a larger platform as well.
Okay. And let me turn to Marie now. Marie, you've worked in this area for many years. What do you see as the trends, the new therapies or new things that are happening to try to make a dent in this problem, is it growing? Is it being stopped? Are there still millions of people in the shadows who are not getting the help that they need? And what is the a lot of questions, I know. What is the cultural genesis of this problem? Marie.
That is a big question with a lot of different answers. We did see during COVID and while folks were under lockdown, that there was an increase not only in frequency, but especially in the severity of the violence for abusive relationships. So victims are experiencing more frequent and more severe forms of violence. It is a universal, and one of the cultural aspects of it is that it hits every single culture, every single socioeconomic group, every racial ethnic group. The wheel that Rachel talked about is known as the power and control wheel, because it's power and control that really is the desire for power and control is the driving force for the abusive partner. And that wheel in particular is part of a culture that we also need to make sure we address in our work at Safe Futures. That power and control was written specifically for heterosexual men who are abusive to their female partners. So you saw very specific gender language in that. If you remove gender specific language and just focus on the behaviors in that power and control wheel, you will see the common themes of abuse, regardless of who is the victim and who is the offender, what their gender, how they identify, their orientation. It's specific behaviors that are red flags. And so part of what Safe Futures does is try to make sure the community understands those warning signs and what are some of the red flags. And then on the flip side, what are some of the indications of a healthy relationship, so that it's not just, oh, well, I get a little bit of that, but it's not that bad in my relationship. What should we be aspiring to in our relationships? What should a healthy relationship look like? And if you don't have that, then this is not the right relationship. So Safe Futures does a lot of work in the community trying to address some of those myths and misunderstandings, because it does cut across all demographic groups. We want to make sure that men who are victims, LGBTQ community who are victims, non-English speaking, immigrants, refugees, we want to make sure that anyone who is subject to these kinds of power and control dynamics knows that we are a resource for them. So there's a huge cultural component, and we do spend quite a bit of time at Safe Futures trying to address that on a larger scale.
All right. Let me turn to Chris now. So Chris, as Marie was talking about the warning signs and things, give us a little bit of the importance of understanding that it's not just physical abuse, although that is an important component that can be worked up to from other forms of power control, coercion, psychological, and so forth, intimidation, and other methods of control. Give us a few minutes discussion of the importance of that, so people listening can know it's not just physical abuse that we're talking about.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Sheila. Oftentimes when we talk about abuse or domestic violence, we think of physical violence first. That's the first thing that comes to our mind. But rarely does it start with physical violence. Usually you will see signs of emotional abuse, of financial abuse, before you'll see any physical abuse. And we also see a lot of technological abuse now, people using technology to track their partners or their loved ones, to spy on people, to gather their financial information. So it is important to look out for all of those things.
Okay, and I want to also have you comment on the impact on children in our society, because I know you work with Camp Hope and with young children who've been impacted by domestic violence to try to give them some therapy, some enjoyment in life, to work on their issues. How is it that children are impacted, either as direct victims, or is it true that even as bystanders to seeing what's happening in their homes with domestic violence between the adults, that they can be just as powerfully traumatized?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we can all relate to the fact that it is difficult to see someone you love being hurt. And so that in and of itself is a challenge, but also we learn how to make our way in the world at a very young age. Like, we learn about relationships and we learn how we interact and attach with others. Those are things that we pick up very, very young, as early as infancy. We start developing attachments with the people around us. And so when those attachments are unhealthy, or when there are toxic behaviors in the household, those impact the way that children see themselves in the world, the way that they see their future. It can lead to problems with mental health, depression, or anxiety. It increases their risk for substance use. And also, people who experience domestic violence as children are more likely to become perpetrators or victims of domestic violence themselves as adults.
Okay, so now you've prepared some images and forms for us to take a look at. And so we're going to play those, and I'm going to have each of you in turn comment on those to give us a fuller understanding of what Safe Futures does and how we have to support it, and about the walk. We'll get more information about that too. So just to let the control know that I'm putting up the PowerPoint. Can everybody see that? Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, Safe Futures. That's the logo, saving lives, restoring hope, stopping abuse. Marie, why don't you talk about this slide?
So this slide is a visual image of what Margaret was talking about. You can see in the southeastern corner of Connecticut, Safe Futures covers those 21 cities and towns, but we are part of a statewide network with other agencies that cover the entirety of the state of Connecticut, so that we can coordinate, because maybe someone isn't safe in the town they're in, but they have family in another county. So as part of this coalition and this network, we can help facilitate moving them from one part of Connecticut to another, or even out of state or into the state if need be. But this is a reflection of that statewide network of services.
Right. And is there a national network that gives resources and help? And is that, tell us a little bit about how Safe Futures is funded. What are there national statutes? I've heard of the Violence Against Women Act. And then on the state level, what are the funding sources and support around, for Safe Futures?
I think I'll defer to Margaret on that. She's got the better insight into that whole funding.
Okay, Margaret, you want to take that question?
Yes. One of my duties is writing grants, looking for funding along with our development team as well. But we do get funding from many sources, from federal, state, regional, local sources. And being part of CCADV, we do get money through the VOCA Act that Sheila mentioned. That comes, through our state to the coalition and then to the member agencies. Also at the state level, we receive money through Department of Social Services, Department of Public Health. Again, it's through CCADV, and also through Office of OPM, Office of Public and Management. So we do get, federal state money sort of funneled through CCADV. We also have some federal grants that we've written for housing, for pets. We have some state grants also through the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. And then, regionally, we do get funding through some of the cities and towns. We had received a lot of the ARPA money for the COVID mitigation. We also we have a lot of support through local foundations and corporations throughout our county. And then, of course, we have, through development, we have individual donors as well. So
Right.
we try to have a variety and various sources of funding.
Right. And it is important that private people in the community, businesses in the community are also asked to support, because it cannot be done alone just on the government resources, right?
No, it can't. And, as I said, there's individual donors. There's also local corporations and foundations. We are a United Way agency as well, and receive funding from them. So yes, it really takes, again, of various sources of funding.
Okay. Marie, do you want to look at this one? Give us a little summary of what we're seeing here.
So I think Margaret will be able to fill in, since she's really the one who digs into these details for our reporting for our funders. But this is a snapshot of the number of services that we provided in fiscal year 2022. So you'll see the large number on the bottom, 35%. 35% of the criminal cases in New London County are domestic violence related, and our advocates, it's Safe Futures staff who, as you heard Rachel describe in her story, kind of guide the victims through those court hearings. the number at top 10,000, we serve nearly 10,000 individual clients. So those are not duplicated, and each of those clients typically receives multiple services. Margaret, I don't know if there's something you would like to.
Well, what I wanted to add was, and this was sort of mentioned earlier, that actually during COVID in like years 2021, there was a great increase of who we served of like 39%. And that wasn't just true to our agency, but across Connecticut and across the nation. And Sheila, you did sort of allude to that. But that has kept up in fiscal year 22. So, we had this big increase like 2 years ago, 39%, and we have kept at that and even a little bit more. So, so everything Marie said about this, and it also shows we have 7 housing programs, and that's we have the emergency shelter and 6 other housing programs. And then also this shows we have a partnership with law enforcement called the Lethality Assessment Program. And that's when police go on the scene of a domestic violence incident, they are assessing the victim to see if they're at risk of being murdered. And so every police we work with, state, local, tribal, do this assessment program, not just in our county, but throughout Connecticut. We're one of the only states that does this assessment program throughout law enforcement. And so you can see the numbers there.
Okay.
And just to highlight that 75% number, because I'll want to come back to that when we talk about the Family Justice Center model.
Sure. All right. Chris, you want to talk about the walk?
Sure. So every year we have a 4K safe walk. This year it's going to be Sunday, October 23rd. It starts at 9 a.m. at Waterford High School. The idea is to raise awareness and support for survivors of domestic violence and to really elevate the voices of survivors. This year, we will also be remembering law enforcement officers as calls to domestic abuse scenes are often the most dangerous that they encounter. You can register for the walk online. It's $25 for adults. It's free for children or students. You can register as an individual or as a team. It's a really fun community event. We have music. We have lots of raffles, different community partners. The police are often there with their dogs. They have a community emotional support dog that they bring. It's a lot of fun.
Okay. Well, you alluded to honoring the police. And this year, just recently, we had that awful shooting in Bristol, Connecticut. And will you be referring to that? I'm sure in some of the proceedings.
I don't know if. Yeah, I believe we will be talking specifically about those officers, but we also want to just thank and acknowledge the law enforcement community in general. We work really closely with the law enforcement in our region, and they work really hard to protect survivors of domestic violence and are a big part of connecting them with our services and in saving lives.
Right. Okay. So the walk is Sunday, October 23rd, 9 o'clock at Waterford High School. And it should be a beautiful fall day. And come bring your family and share in this important cause. And wear purple.
Yes, wear purple as Sheila has today, but some of us haven't.
Well, okay.
I will be wearing purple on Sunday.
All right. And we want to let everybody know that on Wednesday, there'll be a ceremony at the State House, and that the executive director of Safe Futures, Catherine Verano, is going to be honored by giving a talk that day to the crowd there. So that must be a proud moment for Safe Futures, right?
Yes, in fact, this is the first year that the state will be raising a purple flag. Purple, as Sheila said, is the color of recognition of domestic violence. And so this is the first year that's going to be done at the state level. And this was planned before the horrific incident with the 2 police officers in Bristol, but they will be addressing that and honoring them there as well as we will at our walk. But yes,
Sure.
Kathy Verano is very honored to be
Right.
asked to speak.
And in
So,
fact, Safe Futures is hosting a bus. So if any of your listeners are local to Southeastern Connecticut and would like to join us for that ceremony, go to our webpage. And there's limited space available on the bus, but we are hosting a bus for anyone who wants to be able to get to Hartford for that event.
okay, that's great. Will it probably be televised too? I hope you certainly will have video of it that you put up, I'm sure, right?
Mhm.
Great.
Yes.
All right. So this slide shows the different programs, the crisis programs and the prevention and support programs, housing programs. So it's all great. The question that I always have is what happens to the people that are still in the shadows, and how does the word get out to them that this help exists? I know that I live in Colchester, which is one of the towns in the Safe Futures area. And sometimes I talk to people in the supermarket or around town, and they never even heard of Safe Futures. So I guess a question that would go to any one of you, Margaret, you can start. What's the way that you work to get the word out to those who are not clued in to what it is and how to get help?
Well, I'll say some things, and I'm sure Christine and Marie also have some thoughts on this, but we do a lot of community awareness, engagement to let people know about our services. Of course, nowadays we're online, we're on social media, but we also do a lot of events in the community throughout the year, not just our walk. We are asked to come speak at very many community organizations. We have a program, prevention education, that goes into the schools. So we are trying to get our message out, and what we do however we can. We work with a large network of community providers in different ways, in housing, in medical, in other social services. We are listed on 211. We're part of, as we said, CCADV. They have a statewide network. So we just try to get our message out, and wherever we go, and I'm sure Christine and Marie can mention this as well, and we talk about our services, somebody always comes up to us and say either they've been impacted by domestic violence, use our services, or someone they know, or they know someone, or they themselves need our services. So in a sense, it's really word of mouth, but it's very, we do have a, communication plan in a way, but, it's not, we try to get our, who we are, what we do out in any way we can.
Great. I noticed that on this slide, when you think about the beautiful video that we started with, Rachel's story, she is a perfect example of how someone goes through the system from crisis to help and support, right? She started out in crisis. She went through the transitional program. She went through the counseling. The children got the help they needed through Camp Hope and other counseling programs. And now she's got a job, and she's going to be out in the community and probably going to be on her own with her family. That's a success story, right?
Yes. Yeah, and one of the, you mentioned the people who don't even know we exist, and then there's the kind of misunderstanding that what we do is an emergency hotline and a shelter, and that's all we do. But you can see from this list, we offer such a wide range of services, really, to make sure that when someone has had, feels like they're ready to end their working relationship with us, that they're ready to be self-sufficient and independent, and they have hope in their lives. And so that's why we need such a wide range of services. And Safe Futures is unique in a lot of ways. We do things that not all domestic violence agencies do. And we also have a really fully integrated relationship with other community agencies that can fill in the gaps.
Okay, great.
It's also important, I think, to mention that all of these services are available to everyone. So regardless of your gender identity, of your sexual orientation, of your immigration status, the language you speak, our programs are open to everyone. And you don't have to identify as a survivor or a victim in order to get help. I think sometimes, people have a sense that like maybe something is not right in their relationship, or they have that gut feeling in their stomach, but they're not sure what to do about it or how to articulate it. You don't have to be experiencing physical abuse in order to talk to someone or, to get help sort of working through that. And we can also assist friends or family members. So if you know someone that is being abused or you think that maybe someone is, and you're not sure what to do, you're not sure how to support them, give us a call our hotline and talk it through with an advocate. We can help you safety plan and provide support for you as well.
All right. Those are good points, Chris, because it's important for people to know it's not just a place to call when you are in absolute crisis and need a crisis shelter. It's a place to get help, whatever stage that you're at, in many, many different areas. And I think that's important, not just for that ultimate crisis point.
Yes.
Yeah.
We do recognize too that not everybody wants to leave their relationship. And I think that's important for people to understand too. If you call us, we're not going to tell you to leave or push you to leave. We're going to help you be as safe as you can with whatever choices you make. We recognize that sometimes it's not about ending your relationship. You just want the violence to stop, or you want it to be better.
Right.
And so leaving is not a requirement, for services either.
Right. And it's also important to notice that a lot of people are afraid of the court process when they have to go through the restraining orders or divorce issues or custody issues. You have victim advocates that are helpful. And Rachel alluded to that also. You are not alone. And that's very important. So there's a myriad of activities and important programs at Safe Futures. Okay, let's go on. All right, Chris, this is your area, Camp Hope. Talk about that.
So Camp Hope America is a national program for children who are impacted by family violence. Safe Futures is one of several affiliates. The program is designed to use hope science to help people overcome adversity. And so researchers have found that hopeful thinking leads to better emotional well-being. It leads to healthier interpersonal relationships, even has better health outcomes. People who are more hopeful thinkers are less likely to have chronic health conditions like high blood pressure or diabetes. And so through this program, Camp Hope America, we teach children hope as a cognitive skill that they can use to help heal and move on from their trauma. And so we go to camp for a week in the summer. It's a week of overnight camp. And then we also have a year-round group mentorship program. So we engage with those children throughout the year. The Path to Healing is the theme for Camp Hope for summer of 2020. Each year has a different theme. And the curriculum is created by Camp Hope America. And each one includes hope heroes. So one of the things we do while we're at camp is we read stories about people who have overcome adversity, and we have conversations about that. We talk to kids about who believed in this person. What did they do when things got really hard? So they can start thinking about how to incorporate those concepts into their own life. We want kids to know that they have the power to build a brighter future for themselves, and that future is not defined by their past.
Well, I think it's important that you talked about hope as a science, and these social science academicians are are saying that hope is something that you can almost quantify. And there are tables and criteria that are used, right, to determine the level of hope that one has.
Yes, there is a hope scale. It's a self-report survey. There's one for children and for adults. We actually use the adult hope scale even within our own agency. We measure hope among our staff, and we work to incorporate hope-centered engagement into our services in all programs. So, everywhere from our intake process to our court management or our case management, we ask ourselves, how are we being hope-centered in our engagement with survivors?
Right. But it's important also to note that when the kids go to the Camp Hope, they're also engaged in the kind of normal day-to-day camp activities that they would, and that there any counseling or Safe Futures hope-oriented activities are weaved into the process of being a regular camper, right?
Absolutely. Campers get to do all the classic activities. We go swimming, we go hiking, we do climbing activities, ropes courses, arts and crafts. And it's really a unique program because we partner with an existing camp and we bring our own counselors. And so every cabin has one camp counselor from our partner camp, as well as one Hope counselor. And so we have someone there who is really an expert in camping and that sort of youth development and outdoor programming, but also someone who is an expert in trauma-informed practices and, understanding the needs of children who have been impacted by trauma. It's also, I think, really important because we know that the kids we bring to camp are identified as children who have experienced trauma, but childhood adversity is actually quite common. And so in any given camp population, you're likely to find many children who have also experienced some type of childhood adversity. And so our program also allows for training to the camp staff about trauma-informed practices, so they can help make those standards universal among all of their campers.
Okay. And what are we looking at here? Is this at the camp?
This is at Channel 3 Kids Camp. Yes.
Uh-huh.
This actually was, and this as well. So a little background about sort of our Camp Hope journey. When an organization first decides to participate in the program, you have a year where you're considered a readiness site, where you're sort of getting ready and training. And so for that year, we went to camp with another organization to train. And then 2020 was supposed to be our first year of camp. But because of the pandemic, overnight camps were not allowed to operate that summer. And so we had to conduct a lot of our programming virtually, which, while not the same at all, was very successful. And we were able to do day trips. So we couldn't go to overnight camp, but we went to camp during the day. And then our first year of overnight camp was in 2021. And that was at Channel 3 Kids Camp. And you can see in this picture here, the picture on the right of the climbing wall, that's at Channel 3 Kids Camp. And then this past summer, we did something a little bit different. We partnered with another organization and we brought our groups together to a camp in Massachusetts called Camp High Rock. So it's been really fun. This is zip lining that the kids got to do. That was, I think, one of the most anticipated activities. Oh, this was one of my favorite to watch. This is called Jacob's Ladder. And you can't tell from this picture, but that's about 40 or 50 feet above the ground. And so campers get clipped to a harness and they have to climb this huge ladder where the rungs are like 4 or 5 feet apart. They have to really pull themselves up. And this young woman, she was so determined to get up to the top. And every step of the way, she was like, this is so scary. I am so scared. And we don't push kids into doing activities, we like them to challenge themselves, but it's always challenge by choice. We want them to recognize that you have a comfort zone, you have a challenge zone, and that's a good place to be, but we don't want you to be in your panic zone. If you start to panic, that's a time to sort of take a break and regroup. So we always give them the option, to pause an activity or to sit out an activity. And she was so determined she would not, even though she was so scared. And so it was really a big triumph for her when she got to the top of that Jacob's ladder, and she walked all the way across that beam there. Yeah. This is one of our campers from last summer. She got to go water skiing. So at Camp High Rock, they have a big lake, so they're able to do water skiing, kayaking, and high adventure of water sports there, which was a lot of fun. These are some of our younger campers at their swim lessons. Oh, this is just lunchtime. We were just us having fun at lunch. Yeah. And this is a team building exercise that we do sometimes. This was in 2020, so we had to use the bandanas to allow for some social distancing because the pandemic was at its height at that time. But I think it's a pretty common activity. You sort of take the hula hoop and you have to climb through it to get it around the circle, but it gives the kids an opportunity to have fun, to sort of cheer each other on and do something together as a team. This is one of our Hope counselors with one of her campers.
Okay, so now we go into a whole new venture that Marie can talk about. She's the project manager. And for years, Safe Futures has been at 16 J Street in New London, the main building, and the Phoenix House adjacent to that. Why do we need the Center for Safe Futures, and what does it mean, Marie?
So the Center for Safe Futures is based on what's called a Family Justice Center model. And like Camp Hope, this is part of a national network of family justice centers through the Alliance for Hope International. And so they are providing us with the technical assistance to figure out how to make a family justice center model that works for Southeastern Connecticut. It has been defined by the Department of Justice as a best practice in responding to and working with survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. And what it does is it incorporates wraparound services in our delivery model. So what that means, if you think back to Rachel telling her story, and her children are getting some therapy, clinical mental health services, because Safe Futures provides counseling and advocacy, but we don't do mental health therapy the way a licensed therapist would do. So at the Center for Safe Futures, the organizations who typically interact with individuals and families who've been exposed to domestic violence or experienced domestic violence will be under one roof. So, for instance, Rachel, we are partnering with the Sound Community Services and Child and Family Agency to provide behavioral and mental health clinical services to people affected by domestic violence and sexual assault, stalking, and trafficking as well. We've also partnered with New London Adult and Continuing Ed. So there will be courses available in our center. So the kind of training that Rachel got to become a medical assistant, work in a medical office, those kinds of courses will be available either by Zoom, virtually in our center, or New London Adult and Continuing Ed will offer courses right in that center. The police and the prosecutors will have space in the office so that what Rachel started hers at one point, she talked about how going to court was the most intimidating time for her. So when a victim doesn't need to, whenever there's an opportunity not to have to be in person in court, we will have a virtual courtroom. And by having the police and the prosecutors on site, a lot of those meetings don't have to happen in the courthouse or in a very kind of cold municipal building. They'll happen at our center, which will be designed to not only provide comprehensive wraparound services, but designed to inspire hope. Christine talked about hope it's the key element with working with children, but it's also the key element working with adults. And so this whole program is going to be designed to inspire and instill and spread hope among adult survivors as well as children. So I'll talk in a minute. I think you have another slide about the Voices Committee, but even just
I just wanted to say that the wraparound is so important, because as someone who worked as an attorney with victims in the years before we had good legislation, before Safe Futures developed all its programs, what would happen is that they would feel somewhat secure getting some service, and then it would be like going the edge of a cliff, because there was nothing to follow it to keep them moving on the trajectory of getting the help they needed and getting the hope they needed. And this wraparound idea is perfect, so that they never feel like they're jumping off the cliff with nobody there to catch them, which is something I know people I dealt with years ago felt. So that's the importance of wraparound service.
And even just not having to go to multiple places. So imagine they'll be able to come into one building, and Rachel talked about working with DCF. DCF is going to be in this building with us. So instead of, oh, here, call this person, or go to this building and talk to that person, Christine can say she's working with me as a survivor, she could say, hey, I'd really like to introduce you. We have an attorney, Sheila. Would you like to talk to her? I can bring her in to say hello to you if you'd like to just meet her. Or Margaret works with whatever agency. Would you like me to introduce you to her? So it's more than just being more convenient geographically. It's about working as a team to support these individuals and their children who have incredibly complex needs.
Right.
I mean, think about how it would feel as a person who has experienced abuse, which oftentimes is, minimized by society, or not acknowledged, or is kept hidden. And so you feel isolated and you feel alone. And then you walk into a family justice center and you have a team of people around you. And every single one of them is saying, I believe in you and I am on your side.
Right. Well, and this slide shows all the benefits of a family justice center, right?
Correct. So the first Family Justice Center was formed in the early 2000s. Right now, there are about 150 of them in the U.S., and there are more in other countries that the Alliance for Hope has helped these places all get up and running. And so they've been able to study some long-term outcomes of Family Justice Center models and compare the communities that have a Family Justice Center to those that do not. And these are some of the differences in outcomes that we see.
Okay. Do you want to comment on any particular ones, or?
I think so. Just to point out, the original Family Justice Center in San Diego was founded by former prosecutors. And yes, holding offenders accountable in the criminal justice system is a valuable thing for the community to be able to do. But it's not the only thing. And as Christine talked about, not everyone we serve is interested in leaving the relationship. And what many, many, many people say is, I don't want the marriage to end. I don't want the relationship to end. I want the abuse to stop. I want to feel respected. I don't want to feel afraid. So the criminal justice system can be a very helpful component, especially when we talked about the lethality assessment program, when we find high risk offenders, where we're not talking about offenders who are more likely to strike out physically. We're talking about offenders who are more likely to murder. So when we identify those high risk cases, then the prosecution piece can play a really, really important role. But it is not the ultimate goal of every single client that we work with, that their offender be prosecuted. And we honor that. We respect that. There are benefits to doing that, but there are other ways to hold offenders accountable for their behavior, for those who want to stay in the relationship but want to be safer within that relationship.
Right. Okay. What's Voices? So
Voices is a group of survivors. Again, it's based on a national model out of the Alliance for Hope. They strongly encourage family justice centers to host Voices committees. And it's a group of survivors who've come together, who are no longer in crisis, no longer in danger, because it's not an anonymous group, it's a public group. But they want to give back to Safe Futures. And so they provide us guidance and insight. So as we're developing what our Center for Safe Futures will look like, Who are the service providers who need to be involved? What should the building look like and feel like? Those are the kinds of questions we're asking the committee members for guidance about. They also then can serve as speakers. They want to write notes, like welcome notes, and kind of, you got this, to people who, when they're doing their intake, can hear from someone who's made that journey from being in an abusive relationship to being in a place of hope and healing, and kind of just cheerlead for the folks that were beginning or who are just beginning that journey. And there are 2 different levels of membership, because not everybody can make the same kind of commitment. And so if anyone is interested in joining, you can find us on our website and reach out to us. It is, a voluntary group, but it is going to really provide a guiding voice, quite literally, for how we develop this Center for Safe Futures and how we function once we're open.
So that brings up an interesting question. Over the years, there have been so many survivors who've gone on with hope to lead good lives, and all because of the help they got at Safe Futures. Up until now, Marie, has there ever been any organization of survivors, any continuing feedback from them over the years, contact with them?
Not really in such an organized way. I mean,
Yeah.
some of the survivors we worked with do stay in touch with us, but because of confidentiality, we don't want anyone to feel obligated. We can't reach out to them 5 years later to see how they're doing. So the Voices Committee is an opportunity for those who want to stay connected. Maybe some of them did not receive services from Safe Futures. Some of them may have received services in another part of the state or the country, but they're still, as survivors, able to help us design a model that makes the most sense for survivors in Southeastern Connecticut.
Okay.
I'd also like to say, to sort of add to that, that actually on staff we have, again, keeping confidentiality, but we have staff with lived experience who have been impacted by domestic violence, and also on our board as well. And so, some survivors have become staff, and also survivors have also become volunteers and helping us with other things. But it's true, Voices is really an organized national, international group. So getting that input in a different way.
Right. And this slide shows all the different agencies and people that are going to ally to come together at the center, right?
Correct. And the steering committee members meet every month. And they are really a driving force in how we design these programs and how we'll deliver services at the Center for Safe Futures. We also have other partners that are within the subcommittees, the working groups that are putting the program together. This is an architectural rendering of what we anticipate the building to look like. We want it to feel like coming home. We want it to fit in a New England coastal community, not feel like a sterile municipal building. We want people to feel comfort and warmth when they come in.
Okay, what is the anticipated opening?
Well, we have bought the land. We also wanted it to be in a centralized place because we serve 21 towns. We bought property in Waterford, right on Route 85, and that was actually through, talking about sources of funding, that was through a donation and a bequest. We were able to purchase that land, and now we're about to kick off a capital campaign to raise funds, which we have already raised some funds for the actual building itself. And we hope to have that in 23. Okay. That's sort of our plan.
What is this?
This is just a first draft, kind of a rough draft of what the floor plan will look like. Each color-coded area is a different kind of area of service delivery. So there are some community group areas, but everyone will be easily accessible to everyone else in the building. Okay. And there'll be a central courtyard area for just gathering.
I think also I just want to add quickly that as Christine and Marie have mentioned, we have already implemented some pieces of the family justice model. That is what we're going towards, and we're have integrated that into many things we do, like Camp Hope, like Voices. Even our work with partners have increased. So although we don't have a building, and actually we're going to have a soft opening of the center. We received funds through the City of New London to do a satellite office in New London, and we hope to have that going in January of 2023. So although we don't have a building yet, we are implementing that model.
Okay,
Great
great.
point.
So in the time that we have remaining, I would like each of you to tell people watching this, and that you'll send the YouTube out, what would you most like to say to people about the importance of fighting domestic violence, coming to the walk, and doing whatever's necessary to try and change this culture? Why don't we start with you, Margaret?
Well, I would say that, we are available 24/7. We have a 1-800 hotline number that is answered 24/7, 365 days of year. So if you have
What's
any
the number? Give us the number.
Well, here it is. I'm not wearing purple, but I have on my purple bracelet, and it's 860-701-6001. So that is our toll-free number. And again, 24/7. So I would say if you have any questions, or someone who maybe is being impacted by domestic violence, is to give us a call at any time. And also as a community to support us through the walk.
Okay, great. All right, Christine, what are your thoughts?
I would say call us. Don't hesitate. Even if you're not sure if we can help you, if we're not the ones who can help you with what you need, we'll connect you with the people who can. Our services are free and confidential. You don't even have to give us your name if you don't want to. And domestic violence is common. So try to remember that you are not alone in your experiences, and it is not your fault.
Okay, and Marie?
Just to piggyback off both Margaret and Christine, call us 24 hours a day, free and confidential conversations. And everyone has the right to a healthy, happy, nurturing relationship that's mutually respectful. And if you know someone, or if you're in a relationship that is like not that bad, it's also not that good, and you deserve more. So if you feel like maybe there's something missing, that you should be getting more out of your relationship, call us. It may not be abuse, but it may just be, if it is, we can certainly help you with more concrete services. But it is worth having that conversation about, am I getting what I deserve out of my relationship? Is it mutually respectful? And are we encouraging and building one another up? And if not, then it might be time to get out.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank Margaret, Chris, and Marie for giving us an important lesson in what Safe Futures does in our community, how important it is to support its efforts. And you can do that by showing up at the walk on Sunday, October 23rd, starting at 9 o'clock at the Waterford High School. We hope to see you all there. We're in purple, enjoying a beautiful day and doing something good for yourself, your family, and the community. Okay, so it's great to see everyone on Talkback. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you so much. Thank